Deputy President. I have had many a reason and opportunity to wonder whether the workings of this place are in any way in touch with the needs, desires and aspirations of the Australian people, but never so clearly has an example been given to me that we are so disconnected from the Australian community than this tax package. The Australian community that I know, that I love, that I've called my home for most of my life, the values that we hold, they are of community. They are of coming together to get things done, and they are of fairness. And what this means for our tax and contribution system is that we believe that if you are a bit better off, you pay a little bit more. And if you are less well off, you pay a little bit less. And we pool our resources and we fund education and health and transformative programs such as the NDIS. We help our farmers and our young people and our older Australians. We lend a hand. And what this bill seeks to do, what this toxic, greedy package seeks to do, is rip apart the foundation of that fairness, take away from the Australian community the ability to make those changes in people's lives and to invest in the services that they need to live a good life. Now, you have heard this evening that the view of the Australian people is that everybody, the overwhelming majority of us, believe that it is the right of every Australian to live a good life, to have a job, to have a home, to have an education, and to live in an environment that is safe. And yet this package systematically seeks to undermine this place's ability to provide those rights for people. The Liberal government has spent the best part of the last 10 years telling the Australian electorate that there is simply not enough to go around, that we must slash and burn and cut essential services and advocacy groups and tear down infrastructure spending simply to get a magical budget back into balance. And then overnight, the minute the opinion polls require it and you've got a sniff in the right direction, all of a sudden there's $144 billion sloshing around waiting to be spent. $144 billion over the next 10 years. And the best this government can think to do with it is give it to the big end of town, not to health, not to education, not to the NDIS, not to ensure that young people have safe and secure work, not to ensure that young people can buy a house affordably, not to ensure that we can go to university, not to ensure that we can go to good quality TAFE. No. Malcolm Turnbull says, give it to the big end of town, give it to Gina, give it to Clive, give it to Twiggy. They need it. Because God knows they need another yacht. God knows I need a second house. God knows I just can't take the burden of paying my fair share. Well, it is a disgrace. I sit within this chamber ashamed of it. There are thousands of people who this very night will go to sleep on the streets of this nation's capitals. There are thousands of farmers who do not know where the next month's pay will come from. There are thousands of women suffering in domestic violence situations. There are thousands of young people struggling with addiction. And yet this chamber is being asked to consider that its highest priority be that billions of dollars be given to billionaires. It is disgusting. Now, as a former Labour supporter, as a member of a former Labour household, I have to say how disappointed I am to have heard the contributions so far of the Labour Party, and to read in the newspapers today and over the last couple of months of their position. I come from a strongly Labour area. My local member is a Labour MP. I live, and proudly so, in the South Metropolitan area of Western Australia. If you want to know what unemployment looks like, what youth unemployment looks like, what lack of services look like, you come to my local community and my local area. And I will tell you now, what the people of my community need is not a double the size because we can't think of anything better to do tax cut. They need an increase to New Start. They need a mandated living wage. They need health and they need education services. They need addiction services. They do not need a tax cut. They need essential services and they need them now. And I am so disappointed to see the Labour Party join in with the government on a rhetoric around this tax auction. Oh, who can one-up the other on offering this side or that side a bigger tax cut so we can win the next election, win the next by-election. Let's make sure that we can stay here rather than thinking about those who need us. I have spent too long talking with people who do not know where their next meal will come from. I have spent too long talking with people who do not know if they will have a roof over their head, to indulge either side of this chamber in its fantasy that what it is seeking to do will go anywhere near addressing the real needs of Australians who are vulnerable, Australians in need, Australians who should be the focus of the work of this place. Now, I sit here as the youngest MP elected to the Australian Senate, and young people speak to me frequently about their desires and fears and aspirations for the future. And not one of them has ever said to me that the #1 priority of Australian politics should be giving billions of dollars to billionaires. Not one of them has said to me, what I would like to see is a more greedy society, a more selfish society, a society where we turn on each other and away from each other. Universally, they say to me that they want to live in a community which cares for each other, which says no to poverty, which says no to fear, which is brave and inclusive and innovative. A community where they know that there will be a job for them when they graduate. A community where they know that their family will be safe. And those things can only be ensured, those rights can only be safeguarded when we have the resources to make it so. And this package fundamentally undermines our ability to do that. It is greed, it is selfishness, it is political expediency above the needs of the people in its most grotesque form. It is a cold and absolutely atrocious attempt to buy an electorate. Well, I tell this government, the Australian people are far smarter and far kinder than we so often give them credit for. They see through this. They see through you. And they will demand, when they are given the next opportunity, that all of those who participated in this horrendous exercise in the undercutting of the community's ability to care for their most vulnerable and safeguard a good future, answer for their actions over the next 2 days. And I take some solace in the knowledge that we in the Australian Greens are at least brave enough to argue that if there is money to be invested, that it go to those who need it, not those who want it and are able to get the ear of this Parliament the most.